Hi, I'm Tom Ferris.
Hi, nice to see you.
Thanks for coming.
Nice to see you.
Tom. How are you?
You're welcome. To get up and
I can I get you something to eat?
No, we're gonna watch you eat.
Howard.
Yes.
It won't be pretty.
Yeah, I know, exactly.
We'll have our reward at the end.
Yeah.
I'm glad to hear that.
I hear if we are not interesting, we don't get to eat.
You don't get dessert. That's
Right.
You don't get dessert. I had enough dessert yesterday.
I did too.
Yeah. It's me for this month.
Oh, I know.
Yes, wonderful to see you.
How are you? Nice to meet you.
Laura's our new associate in the West Hartford
Oh,
office.
fantastic,
So I
good.
get to work with her.
Wow, great, wonderful. Well, great for me. Yeah. Hi, Janet.
Come with class.
Oh, wonderful. Oh, I'm wonderful. I love that. Thank you. Oh, my word. That's
Well, I was on for goodness.
without that.
That's before my time.
Really?
But oh my
I
goodness.
feel the same way. And
Wouldn't that
Mike's
be funny?
brief to talk about it, so I'm glad you're here to talk.
No, because, we moved to West Hartford right after your marriage. We can use her right now. Right? And I had joined the league my senior year in college because my mother had been a member. And then got married and moved here, and thank God for the provision class. I wouldn't have known. I wouldn't have known that. Well, she does great work, and it's also a base for wonderful friendships. I'm still very supportive.
As am I.
Of it. I wish my daughter would join, but
She's got a rite of connection.
yeah, she.
In what year?
There just was. She would have, I think, but it wasn't ever the right time.
Yeah. So we almost got every seat filled. Terrific.
Wonderful.
There'll be a few more people sitting down. So I figured we wait a couple more minutes to get people settled, sit down before we begin, and then
Who was the person
we're
that was
on
gonna-
right now. So then we're ready to go. We'll go off the
March. Right here, but we're going to have to do it afterwards, I guess.
What I told office services.
And what was she going to ask us?
In March, I was going to see if we could get you on film talking about the importance of supporting the importance of supporting why do we need
We want to be
this going
on
forward.
it still.
Another office call.
And who's the audience?
It'll be for the event. It's for our marketing videos. So it would be quick, really quick. We will probably only have, as I said to Tiana, if I could get her to say something about the importance of bringing this kind of presentations to corporations, women corporations to see, hear about our inductee story. If she could say a word on that, but if you could say something about the reason to, or the need to support her, or why it's important to support her. I mean, that could almost be a closing. And we may not use it because we have
the hall because that's what allows us to do what we do.
Well, I understand that, but I'm talking about a little broader than just us, meaning that the importance of showcasing role models or whatever. For
You tell me what to say.
Want it to happen.
you know what? We'll come up with a question because I'd rather you answer it. But think leadership. Think about what we do and how you tie that into women's leadership.
Yep.
Or women understanding what their choices are.
Way too high.
Yes. I'm pulling my hair off.
It's because it's
Mine has hair and you can't see it.
It's probably just as good.
No, but obviously you and Tiana, you had a dress code in pink and I missed the memo. So,
Well,
but I gotta ask her questions. See, I'm not gonna ask you questions if I'm always breathing down your throat. I mean, this is not about her filming, this is about, I think. I'm gonna have to leave out this.
pretty small house, so it's a big crowd.
Terrific, that's great. I'm actually gonna get myself
I can smell the lunch from here.
What I was going to show you,
Thank you, Rich.
this is the question about, your
Yeah.
career lessons in entrepreneurial center banking. This is sort of sets up your story. So this, once you start talking about philosophy and leadership style, this is more where I would think that you would want to engage.
Yeah,
Does that make sense?
yeah.
But
I've
you're
been
gonna
thinking
have to-
about this one. I don't like this one.
You know what?
I don't like that one.
You see how I reversed the order? I was going to take it out.
Yeah, I think, take it out. I don't like
I
it.
agree with you completely, and I took the one up here out. There was about how you brought working women back into the
Yeah.
workforce in their resume.
Yeah.
And so this should be brief only because you want to just tell them, give them the number,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because I think your conversation is going to be down in here and then. This was just a quote.
Yeah, I'm not gonna use that.
No, I know. I just wanted,
Yeah, yeah.
this was relative to the backlash that she's receiving.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Okay? Yeah.
Just, why don't you just leave that down here for me, so like, in case I didn't hear what you...
Oh, I wish I printed too. The problem is I have to read it. Can you give me 2 seconds? Let me just grab one.
I have seen Tom, yeah. I haven't, last time I saw him, he wasn't too well.
Okay.
Yeah, he didn't read. It was maybe this fall.
I think we're
Yeah,
ready.
not good.
Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Dave Pitney's Women's History Month Diversity Luncheon. I'm Tiana Giannopoulos from the West Hartford office, Individual Clients Department, and it's my pleasure to welcome today our guest speaker, Eileen Krause, and Catherine Wilshire, Executive Director of the Connecticut Women's Hall of Fame. Before we get started, a couple of logistical issues. We are going to be filming this presentation in the Hartford office, so if there's anyone here in the Hartford office that prefers not to be on camera, if you're seated in the back row, you will not be on camera.
Everybody runs in the back row.
We'll be encouraging questions at the end of the interview today, so please mute your phones in the local offices until the question period. And without further ado, we'll begin. While I was reading Sheryl Sandberg's bestseller Lean In this past weekend, I was constantly reminded of the impact that Eileen Krause has had on my career and the careers of so many other women. Her influence began in the fall of 1983 when I began my banking career as a credit analyst at Connecticut National Bank. The phone on my desk rang and a cheerful woman introduced herself as Eileen Krause. She had learned from the career services offices at our alma mater, Mount Holyoke College, that I was among that year's crop of new trainees, and she was simply calling to welcome me. I thanked her, hung up, and then did a little digging and was amazed to learn that she was one of 2 senior vice presidents at the bank and the highest ranking woman there. I knew from that moment, from that simple phone call, that she was approachable and I could seek her advice if I needed it. Although we worked in different divisions, our paths frequently crossed in both our professional and our volunteer careers. But it took 10 years before I formally sought her career advice. I was halfway through UConn's evening division in law school, and I was working in the bank's insurance industry department My territory spanned 10 states in the Midwest, and my 40% travel schedule really made night school challenging. So my question to her was, which department would appreciate someone with the legal knowledge of a second-year law student and have a job that required no travel? So she said, without a beat, why don't you talk to those people in the personal trust department? Not having had trust in the states yet, I was stunned. I asked her, why would they hire someone with no subject matter knowledge? And she immediately shot back at me and said, simple, they need your skills. The subject matter knowledge will come on the job. So she encouraged me to step completely outside my comfort zone and take a risk. And the next thing I knew, my business cards read, Senior Compliance Officer, Personal Trust Division. So in other words, Eileen Krause was the Sheryl Sandberg of my day, and the person who eventually led me to Dave Pitney's individual clients department where I am today. Please join me in welcoming Eileen and Catherine Wilshire, Executive Director of the Connecticut Women's Hall of Fame.
Thank you. Thank you.
We're so glad to see everyone here today. Thank you so much to Tiana, who has been a tremendous, long-standing supporter of the Hall and was the co-chair of our very first honorary advisory committee. I want to also thank Jill Little for organizing this luncheon gathering, and to Mickey Orkin, who is the development director of the Connecticut Women's Hall of Fame, who has been stewarding our partnership with Dave Pitney, and to Asker for his commitment to diversity and to the advancement of women. Just for your information, Dave Pitney, or at the time Dave Barry Howard, has been a supporter of the Hall really from its inception. And so I feel like you all have played a major role in our growth. And we welcome this type of partnership, which we think is the ideal model for collaboration between Dave Pitney and a really hands-on engagement of the nonprofits that they fund. So we're thrilled to be here. I want to give you 2 quick sentences or 3 sentences about the Hall, and then I'll get to Ms. Krause. Over the last 20 years, the Hall has inducted over 102 extraordinary women whose stories of struggle and accomplishment form the foundation of a variety of educational programs. Indeed, the Hall was founded on the principle that women need to understand their heritage, the contributions that they've made, to be able to envision the future and the role that they can play in shaping today's world. Our inductee stories are not only a roadmap for success, but they are inspirational, and they are filled with lessons in leadership for women and girls and men and boys. Today, through Eileen's and my conversation, you will learn a bit more about Eileen, as I probably will as well, who is a 2002 inductee of the Connecticut Women's Hall of Fame and has twice been our fearless leader of the Board of Trustees. She is the first woman to head a major regional financial institution in the country, which is really only a small part of her story. Eileen is a natural leader, whether it's in business or otherwise, a beloved mentor, thoughtful philanthropist, and an ideal role model for women and men. So on that note, we're going to get to the questions. Eileen, while you are obviously widely known for your success in banking, you have actually had 3 very distinct chapters in your broader career. If you could just share with us today and describe a little bit about those 3 chapters.
I'd be happy to. You know, one of the wonderful things about being retired is that you can sort of stand back and look back and begin to make sense of a lot of the choices that you made and the sequence in which you made them. Because while you're doing it, it's like, oh my God, let me look at the week's calendar and see, you know, if I can get through the week with the kids, with the job, with the community, with whatever you have. So in retrospect, I look at my career, as Catherine indicated, in sort of three parts. First, married right out of college, came to Hartford, didn't know a soul, hadn't really given a lot of thought to the fact that after this beautiful honeymoon and all this planning of the wedding, we were going to arrive in our little apartment on South Quaker Lane in West Hartford, and my husband was going to, who was a salesman, was going to leave on Sunday night and was going to come home on Friday night, which left an awful lot of time in between that I was going to be doing something, but I wasn't sure what. He had said, those were the days when, you know, a man would say to a woman something like, well, you know, darling, you really don't have to work. Which I didn't know at the time meant I don't want you to work, or, you know. So here I am in this apartment. He's gone from Sunday to Friday. In 2 weeks, my refrigerator, my floor, my stove, my everything was so bright and shiny that you would have never seen it again like that in my whole life. I also had a little map that he gave me so that if I went outside, I didn't get lost. And so I take these little walks around the neighborhood and, you know, find my way sort of around maybe 5, 6, 7 blocks. The one saving grace was that I had joined the Junior League of Hartford, actually, as a transfer, because I had joined during my senior year at college. My mother had been a member. And thank goodness I had that, because it was an organization that was community-oriented, and it had a lot of young women in it, none of whom I had met yet, but at least it gave me a base. So came here, got involved in volunteer work, went back to school for my master's. I went to Trinity, got it in government and economics. Still didn't know what I was going to do for a job. And just when it came time to get a job outside the home, I discovered I was pregnant. So we began a family, and that led to, you know, all the things that having a family leads to. And I continued on with my volunteer work, and then had another baby. And ultimately, at the end of the first chapter, I started my own business. And then started 2 businesses, and it was at that point that my second chapter began, which was when I went to the bank. That is just a very sort of brief thing. The bank chapter, the second chapter, I don't quite know why I was hired, really. Those were the days when the Equal Opportunity Act had just been passed, and lots of people were looking for women to do whatever. And the guy at the bank who'd headed up personnel was going to retire, and so the fellow who had just been made CEO, Joel Alvord, you probably don't remember him. This was some of you may, but I had a wonderful article in the Current about this business that I was running. And he saw the article in the Current. We'd been on several boards in the community, so he called me up and said, will you come down and talk to me? I want to talk to you about coming to work here. I started to laugh. I mean, what can I do? So after much backing and filling, I did have lunch with him, and he started talking about some pretty interesting things. Part of the business that I started and owned was more or less a career development business, and he was looking to turn the personnel department into a more developmental, less administrative kind of effort for the bank. And he saw that some of the things that I was interested in doing and could do might make a nice way to sort of transition that department. So after about 6 months, he made me an offer that I thought I should take. And it was risky. I mean, I had no idea whether I'd like banking, whether it would like me. But then I thought, well, if it doesn't like me, I've started 2 businesses already, I can go back and do another one. So I started at the bank and then was promoted to a senior officer and then on up the line and ultimately ended up as president of the bank. Fascinating time, and then all through that time we were buying banks. Hartford National, bought Connecticut National, bought First Bank in New Haven, bought Mattituck Bank in Waterbury, bought a couple banks, small banks in Massachusetts, then we bought Shawmut in Boston, and that completely changed the landscape. Then we became a dual headquarters bank, and I became vice chairman of the holding company, and needless to say, it was a full-time job at that point. Then Fleet bought Shawmut, and my job changed again. I didn't want to move to Boston. My mother was here, my kids were here, my husband was here, my community was here, which meant a great deal to me. And so I became chairman of Fleet here in Connecticut, and then at 62, my husband was retiring, selling his last business, and we decided, let's go out together. So I retired, and then the 3rd chapter starts, and it's more of a I would say part-time work. I'm really spent a lot of my time as on boards of directors, corporate, publicly held companies. I'm on 4 boards, and it was just at this time, actually, that the job of a corporate director was changing quite radically. I had joined a couple boards while I was still working, and I mean, the responsibility was important for certain, but the amount of work and the seriousness with which you had to take your responsibilities, it's a world apart today. And I took on leadership roles in each one: audit committee head, compensation committee head, lead director. So during this last 10 years, which is sort of the last chapter, I've had an opportunity, I think, to really deeply understand what a corporate director is, what a good corporate director is, what a good corporate director is not, and spent a lot of time, I hope, bringing business judgment, ethics, transparency to the boards on which I serve. Not in addition to that, all the other volunteer work that I know you all do and we all do, and makes this community so wonderful. That was a long 3 chapters, but that was it.
That's
So
okay.
that's the end of the first question.
I'm going to skip ahead to one of the things that we've noticed with our inductees is almost all of them at one point in time faced the word no, and in most cases they faced it multiple times throughout their career. And one of the things that we've noticed as a common theme that make these women remarkable is that they're able to push past that. So I'd like to ask you, when you were an executive in banking in the 80s, what was the environment for a woman in banking as an executive, and how many times you faced that, or don't know whether you want to share any of those with us?
Well, this isn't it. The way I'm going to answer this is maybe a little bit different than what you're thinking. This isn't exactly no, but it's a funny story, and I'll share it with you. When I first went to the bank, as I indicated, the man I reported to was still the senior VP of personnel, and he was an old military guy. He'd been in the military for a long, long time, and then left and went into banking. And he had nodded his head that it was okay to hire me, but he really hadn't hired me. The president and the CEO had hired me, and he was going to mentor me. So the first day, I show up and, you know, in a little corporate suit, and everything's just fine. And so he calls me in to his office to welcome me and give me my, you know, marching orders and so forth, this and that and the other thing. And he said to me, I hope you have thick skin. And I said, yeah, I guess I do. I, you know, played a lot of sports and stuff like that. And so I said, why? He said, well, because, you know, I don't think you're going to make it. So that's not exactly no, but it's sort of no. Yeah, he said, I don't think you're going to make it. I said, oh. I said, why? He said, because you've never worked in a corporate environment before, which was true. I hadn't. I mean, I'd run my own business. I'd done a lot of leading of volunteer organizations, but I'd never worked for a corporation. So I said, you're right, I haven't. And he said, secondly, you're a woman. And I said, yeah, I certainly am a woman. And I said, you know, I'm probably always going to be one, so. That's sort of right. So I said, let's do this. Why don't you tell me what you know, the major things you want me to try to accomplish. And I would say as a footnote, one of the major things that was on the docket was our first EEOC exam, where I don't know if you have this in law firms, but you have to go through the ranks of your people and say who's senior and say who's next and how many women are there and how many minorities are there, and you have to line up your entire workforce in this grid kind of thing. So this was one of the very first things I had to do. So I said, line me up my major projects, and why don't we make a date right now for another conversation in 3 months. I said, we're probably going to have a lot of interface, but another conversation about performance, my performance, in 3 months. So he said, fine. And I said, I hope you will have changed your mind by that. And it's my intention to have you change your mind. He said, we'll see. So we get the date on the calendar, and 3 months, I go into his office, and of course I have no idea I think I'm doing okay, but he looks at me and he said, you know what? I was dead wrong. He said, I apologize. I totally misjudged you. He said, I never should have judged you. I think this is an old military guy? My God, he's about... So I said, that's the best news. I said, I love what I'm doing. I hope I'm making a contribution. Let's shake hands, and we'll put that behind us, and we'll go forward. So that was my no.
I think that's a pretty big no.
On the first day. Turned into I think, a pretty nice yes.
Yeah, I would say. Eileen, share with us a little bit. There's so much written today about women in leadership roles. Share your philosophy, if you would, with leadership and how that guided you in leading the bank.
This idea is not original with me by any shade, but I've done a lot of reading on leadership things along the way. And one of the ideas that really stuck with me because it just makes so much sense. Leadership isn't a position. It isn't a title. It isn't your spot on an org chart. It isn't how many people you manage. It isn't how much money you make. It's whether or not people want to follow you. Because you can't be a leader if you can't inspire people to follow you in whatever it is that you're doing. So it really involves, at whatever level you are, having a vision of, and that's always a big word. It can just be sort of a game plan of what you want to accomplish for the group, for the team, for the company, for whatever level. And then understanding the people who are working with you on your team, what motivates them, what they want from their life, what they need for their motivation, and seeking input from them so that they're committed to this idea, this game plan, this vision, whatever it is. And they are excited about following you, and not you personally necessarily, but the vision and the game plan that you've laid out. And so for me, leadership, really, the most important thing about leadership is followership and understanding. And in each case, understanding how to bring the people along. Followership can be very different depending on the people that you're working with, the environment in which you're working. But
Well, that sort of leads me, I think, to the next question, which is shifting from the bank to your work on corporate boards. I'd love for you to describe a bit about the dynamics. I know you've mentioned to me that you have been on, at one time, 5 major U.S. corporate boards. I'm guessing when you started, you were probably the only woman when you stepped on.
Yes.
So if you could talk a little bit about the dynamics of being the only woman on a board, what happens when other women are brought on board, and sort of weave your leadership into that as well.
Well, yes, I mean, I think a lot of women who are on corporate boards have had the experience of being the woman. And when you're only one, every time something comes up about female, gender, whatever, all heads turn. Let's ask the woman about the woman's viewpoint. Well, there isn't any such thing. I mean, look at us all, right here. All us women. I'll bet you that we have some ideas in common, but I bet you we have an awful lot of ideas that aren't in common. And so there is no woman's point of view. But the burden that you carry as the lone woman among maybe 8, 9, 10 guys is heavy. I mean, you feel it. You want to have some sort of a relevant answer or point of view that's on the topic. And so it's a very, very difficult situation. I mean, it's one you want to be on because it's a wonderful honor and it's a wonderful undertaking. The interesting thing is when 2 women come on, when you're on and then another woman comes on, you'd think, oh boy, this is great. We're going to be buddy. You know, she's going to support me and I'm going to support her. Well, now you've got the setup often that, you know, you're red and you're blue. You're pink and you're purple. You're smart and you're, I mean, whatever opposites, you're smart and you're ditzy. I mean, invariably, the men around the table will try to kind of divide the 2 of you into this one and that one and whatever the opposite is. So when there are 2 of you, you're constantly trying to Well, now I know we disagree on this, and, I know that we're different on that, but, in general, we're really pretty similar on our views, and so you're constantly sort of fighting this effort to pull you apart to try to push yourselves back together. Really interesting. I never would have, and it's happened to me every time. Now, 3 women come on aboard. Now you have a whole different dynamic. Because there's no one woman that can take the whole burden. There's no red and blue, pink and purple, whatever you want. There are 3. That's too many for anybody to try to divide and conquer. I mean, it's the first number that's a critical mass where you can just be you. You can just be you as a woman. You can be you as a liberal. You can be you as a conservative. You can be you as whatever it is you are. And there isn't anything now different. You're a full-fledged board member. There are 6 guys and 3 gals or whatever it is, and it's to me in a situation like that. And I don't think it's only corporate boards, but it's particularly relevant to corporate boards because there's so few women on them. But 3 is the magic number and 4, I've never been on a board with 4. I imagine that's nirvana. I cannot imagine what that would be like.
Well, on that topic, women constitute 16% of the Fortune 500 boardrooms, yet we're 52% of the population. Do you have any insights as to what trends contribute to the stat still being so low, and what you think can be done to change that?
Well, I actually do think it's changing slightly. Slightly. I get a lot of these magazines that list new people that have been elected to boards, and more I'm seeing, instead of 2 women out of 30, I'm seeing 5 or 6 or 7 women out of 25 or 30 listed among the boards. So just in sheer numbers, I am seeing a bit of a difference. Obviously, there are several factors. One, a lot of the younger women coming out of college, business school, particularly business school, are choosing an entrepreneurial route, are choosing to go into their own business. They're choosing not to fight, whatever it is that the corporate ladder kind of puts up in front of you. And there are a lot of them, my daughter included, and they're very bright. So they're not even attempting to go the corporate route, which would be the route that would be most likely to get you on a corporate board. Most corporate boards, when they go out to search for somebody, want a sitting CEO, a sitting CFO, a recently retired CEO, a recently retired CFO, maybe a sitting chief technology officer, maybe the chief HR officer, not very often, maybe the chief marketing officer. But they're not looking anywhere below the first 2 levels of the corporation. There aren't many women there. So the pool that the selection committees of the boards, the nominating committee, even the recruiters are looking at is totally limiting to women. I mean, you have to go down the next level in most big companies like Procter & Gamble, or you name them, PepsiCo, blah, 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 blah. You really need to get down to the level 3, below the CFO, to the division, the managing division heads, the, whatever, to find a lot of women, and they're really talented. And those are the women that are beginning to show up in the, I mentioned these magazines I get. Every now and then now, you're finding the woman that heads the electronics division of General Dynamics, or somebody that has the major, one of the major divisions of Johnson & Johnson. Huge businesses, huge people responsibilities, being invited onto corporate boards. And I think if that trend continues, we're going to see that data that you talk about changing.
So
Because
there
if
is
it doesn't, if recruiters don't go there, unless we see a lot more speedy movement of women into the CEO roles, more women are going into the sitting CFO roles, the financial roles, but very few into, I mean, what are there, 20 women CEOs of Fortune 500 companies?
I think it's 3 to 5%.
It's almost nothing, and of course, if you're a sitting CEO, your board is saying to you, you're not going to sit on another board, and if you're going to sit on anything, maybe one. So it's that limited pool. If they broaden the pool, go down a level, I think we're going to make some progress.
Well, speaking of CEOs, there's certainly been an ongoing dialogue about women, whether women can have it all. And Sheryl Sandberg has reignited the conversation with her book, Lean In. I am taking note that most of the men in the room are at the first table leaning in.
You guys leaning in?
Yeah.
Okay.
But her book certainly proclaims that women are not aggressive enough in negotiating for themselves and going after leadership roles. So I'm curious as to what you think it means to have it all, and whether you think that's achievable.
Well, first of all, let me step back. I read the book. I don't disagree with what she says. I never like viewpoints that blame the victim. And by that I mean I know plenty of women. I knew them in the bank, know them from all over, that are as aggressive as you could possibly want, and still haven't gotten the rewards that I think they should have. So I think there's a point that she makes there, but to say the reason is that women aren't getting ahead is because they aren't aggressive enough or assertive enough, and not offer up all the other reasons, at least the reasons that I think are true, seems to me to be kind of a one-trick pony. I'd like to talk about it in broader terms. So, I mean, she is Sheryl Sandberg after all, and so I'm not gonna, get in a fight with her. But I think there are so many other reasons for women not getting to the heights they should as quickly as they should. I would include socialization. I would include family. Now she has family, 3 nannies and a husband who owns, is very loving father, but who owns the Survey Monkey.
Yep.
I mean, help galore, and so, there's all those kinds of ancillary things. And frankly, I think there's also been, I think it's dissipating to some extent, but there's certainly been a prejudice, general prejudice, held by women and men alike over the years. It's going away as women are, and men are opening up their minds to gender-free decisions and gender-free judgments. And it is both men and women. It takes both. Not going to happen just one way. So I think it's a having it all is also what does having it all mean? Having it all to you may mean something very different than having it all to you or having it all to me. I mean, I think what we've thought about having it all, it means it's sort of in the very successful male CEO stereotype, great job, lots of money, lots of responsibility, nice family, great vacations. I don't know, you could add to it. That was sort of having it all, and having it all at one time. That was the package. Well, that's not a having it all that a lot of women, want, two, could possibly do. So I think there's a part of having it all that could spread it out. I sort of spread it out, and in the end of 3 chapters, I sort of look back and say, yeah, I had it all, maybe not all at exactly the same time, but it worked. And I think having it all may mean something a little bit smaller for some, something a little bit bigger for others. So I think we need to think about it in kind of broader and looser terms, because really the one who decides whether you have it all or not is you. How do you feel about what you've accomplished in your life? And are the things you still want to do? And God knows we're living so much longer now. You retire at 65, you still got 30 years. And so if you haven't done it then, go do it, to the extent that you can. I'm sort of joking about that, but. So that's sort of my answer to having it all.
I'm going to throw it open to the room to see if
Yeah.
anyone has any questions or any comments or would like to comment on any
I'd love
of
to
the
hear
things.
your thoughts, your comments. I mean, I'm sure you have points of view on some of the things we've talked about.
Eileen, how important were mentors in your career? How important do you think they are for people to succeed?
Well, thank God, Rich, the mentors that I have are not like the first guy. I would have gone nowhere. I wouldn't say they were terribly important to me, honestly, because there weren't too very many of them. I mean, there were mentors at certain times in certain situations, but there was no one that took me under his. There was no her for a wing to fit under. So any mentor I had would have been a male, and the CEO was who hired me was certainly helpful, and he was particularly helpful in giving me the backing to get the things that I wanted to get done in the way of change. I wanted things to be different, and he helped me make those changes and get them instituted. So in that sense, yes. But mentor in the sense of, I'm going to help you get to wherever you want to get to, which I wasn't even sure of most of the time myself, very honestly. I mean, promotions just came along, and you know, one day I was head of marketing, and the next day I was head of strategic planning. I mean, just because, I don't know why. I mean, they said, okay, you can do this. And I didn't have any mentors teaching me the ropes, that kind of thing.
There was a hand up in the back.
I was going to ask about the interface between your volunteer career and your professional career, and commenting on that.
That's a great question, because actually, you know, my volunteer career was my career up until the time I was 40. I started at the bank when I was 40. So all of the work that I had done, leadership work, you know, chairman of boards and so forth, had been really in the volunteer sector. And my husband used to tell me, you know, if you can get people to work like a dog for free for you, my God, you're going to go to the bank. You're going to, you know, it's going to be no sweat at all. So I learned a ton, not only about our community, and not only about diversity in the community and different social services, and you know, that are offered in the community, but I learned a ton about leadership and how to work with people, and how to, you know, meld people into teams and groups, and go forward to achieve desired goals and so forth. I would say that was extremely helpful. And I would say the other thing that was helpful was getting to the bank, coming in at a VP level, and being 40. You know, I wasn't a kid. You know, I was mature. I had mother of 2 children, and had a career in the community that people understood and appreciated. So it wasn't like coming in as a single woman trainee kind of thing. It was, and a lot of it was, and I had met a lot of the people who were senior executives at the bank in the community. So there was a kind of a, well, I wouldn't say there was a social bond, but I mean there was a familiarity that helped a lot. So volunteer stuff taught me a lot. Definitely. And you know, I mean, what gives your life more meaning as well?
The question in the back.
Yes, you offered as one of the areas to help the mobility of women, you said socialization. And I immediately started thinking about
You know, your head is right behind somebody, and I'm having trouble hearing you. That's great. Thank you.
You offered up as one of the barriers of upper mobility of women, socialization.
Yeah.
And when you said that, I started thinking about the education system and the support
Yep.
that women get through their, you know, educational upbringing. I know you went to an all-women's college.
I did.
And do you think that enhanced, you know, your sort of core, if you will, to kind of give you what, you know, what it took to kind of get past some of the stereotypes that you often see?
That's a really great point, and the answer is absolutely yes. 4 years, and I think the same thing happens if you happen to go to an independent all-girls high school. But having 4 years of education, I'd gone to a big public high school, co-ed, and so I knew what it was like to fight with the guys over the A's. You know, and because, you know, you were in competition, but so having then a chance to go for 4 years where women, it was all women classes, all of your leadership roles in terms of your extracurriculars were held by women. and you could compete for those. Very important. It was very important for me. And to a certain extent, it overcame some of the socialization issues in the larger world. The problem was that in my day, your head told you one thing about what you could do it all, you could have it all. The world told you another. There weren't any jobs. You could not go out in 1960 when I graduated, unless you were going to go to grad school and follow some sort of an academic career or law school. We had a few going to med school, nursing a few. But if you were, I was always interested in business. There was no avenue for someone to, even though I knew I could do it, there were no opportunities. And they didn't really start to open up until the mid-'70s. Late 60s, Betty Friedan,
In Title IX.
Title IX in sports. So it was a few years after, but still, I think today, the opportunity you speak of is extremely important. Definitely. Yep.
What were the businesses that you opened? What were the businesses that you opened?
That I opened. Actually, the main business was a career development business. I took advantage of the movement, the desire of companies for women, given the Equal Opportunity Act, and my knowledge of skills gathered in the volunteer workplace. And the business, I started a business that helped women take what they had done in their volunteer career and translate it into a story through a resume, through interviewing techniques, et cetera, to translate all the things they'd done in their volunteer career into something that would get them in the door for a corporate job. And I was doing it for a volunteer. I was doing it for free. And one night my husband and I are sitting at the table, the kids, and the phone rang, and it was somebody calling me to set up an appointment to come start her thing. And my husband looked at me and said, "You're nuts. Why are you doing this for free?" I said, "I don't know, because I've done everything for free. I'm a volunteer person." And he said, you could, your phone is ringing off the hook. You could probably charge for this. I said, "Oh my goodness, what would I charge?" He said, "Oh, I don't know, $50 an hour." So the next time the phone rang, I said to the person on the other end of the phone, I said, "Sure, I'd be delighted to work with you, but I'm starting to charge now. I'm charging $50 an hour." "Oh, fine," she said. I'm figuring that was going to be the end of my business. Quite to the contrary. And then so many women started getting great jobs from this and so forth that the next phase was men calling me. "Do you only do women?" No, I'd be happy to work with you. And the business was absolutely booming. It was incredible. And it was in that time that the offer came to work at the bank. And so I had to weigh, first of all, I had to finish up all the commitments that I had. So I started at the bank 1 day a week. That was my deal. I'll come, but I'll start 1 day a week. because I have all these contracts that I have to finish. I can't leave people in the lurch. So then 2 days a week, and then 3 days a week, and I finally, after about 7 months, worked up to a full-time job. And by that time, all my, other commitments had been met. So it was one of those businesses that just had the wind at your back because of all the things that were going on in the world. So it was fun. It was great. Oh, people were so excited about how they could take things that they had done, and it was magic. You just translated them and they worked. So thank you for the question.
Does anybody on the, who's on video have any questions? Well, I thank you very much for coming to speak with us. We enjoyed hearing about your career, and thank you for sharing all of your experience with us.
Well, I appreciate your listening and being engaged. It's great fun, and thank you very much.
Can I get you a sandwich? You want to sit and eat a minute?
Sure. Great to see you, buddy.
My oldest daughter is getting her finishing up her master's in May at Springfield.
Oh, so good to see you.